I mean, everything growing up in my neighborhood. You know, pre-technology era, like probably last of the baby boomer adolescent childhood years would be just running around on city property, transit property, hanging out in schoolyards, parks, cutting out, cutting out of school, going to Manhattan, Times Square, 42nd Street, by the peep shows. Is I feel like my generation got the last of the big gritty city, and from the prostitutes and the peep shows, like I said, in Times Square, to the arcades that were on Times Square, taking trips to Coney Island, just checking out of life, like checking out of circumstances at home, finding like-minded kids, and gravitating with them, and then just going on, just traveling the city, and with no plans or direction whatsoever. It's like wherever the day takes you, something like that. I mean, it depends. Like, where I grew up, like, it's very machismo, so like, it's all about hanging out with chicks, getting drunk on the weekend, drinking 40s, and I mean, there were so many avenues I had. You had your rockers that listened to heavy metal, hung out and drank 40 ounces in the parks in the schoolyard. You had your break dancers, you had your graffiti writers, you had um, you had your Guidos that loved their cars, their Cadillacs, just cleaning their cars 20 times a day, putting spokes on them. Uh, I mean, there was so many, so many different avenues of ways to go about life. Well, I grew up in Gravesend, Brooklyn, and right in the middle between Avenue and Kings Highway, and the neighborhood was 99% Italian, from McDonald Avenue to Stillwell Avenue, and the borders from like Avenue X to Avenue P. On the other side, from McDonald Avenue to Coney Island Avenue, was all Syrian Jew, Sephardic Jew, and that was it. So the neighborhood was, you either on the line, the F line was like the center point, McDonald Avenue and the F line. So like on one side, on the east side was Sephardic Jewish, and then on the west side was all Italian. So growing up, yeah, it was pure, it was all Italian. There was hardly anyone else there. And now, I mean, I go by my old neighborhood now. There's no mom and pop shops. You had a bakery on every block growing up. You had a pizzeria on every block. You had a couple neighborhood staple restaurants. Uh, you had Fiorentino's, which was on Avenue U. I mean, that's no longer there. And you have Joseph Avenue U, which is still there. And you had a couple neighborhood staples, but now there's like all the bakery. There's hardly any Italians that own any bakeries. There's a few pizzerias left, and the community's gone. Like that neighborhood, when I grew up, everyone policed their own neighborhood. Like the neighborhood kept the neighborhood in check, and that's done. In New York City, like that, there might be one neighborhood left in New York City where it's like that. That's Ridgewood, Queens. The Polish people locked that down, and a little portion of Greenpoint. But that New York City lost that. But anyway, the neighborhood I grew up in, Gravesend, was totally policed by its grandmas, grandpas, pops, and moms. Now when I go there, from 19, from the 80s and the 90s, now it's totally different. Like there's maybe like 5 or 10% of Italian people left, and all the establishments, they're not owned by. There's no more Italian businesses there, and on top of that, it's all Asian. It's all Asian Russian. It's mostly Asian now. They came in, they bought all the houses, and all the Italians sold their houses, went to Staten Island, New Jersey, instead of just toughing it out. They sold out for the dollar, and it's also Mexican and a little bit of Russian. But the Asians, they basically took over the neighborhood through obtaining real estate property. So when I go back there, it baffles me how there's no community anymore. It's like just a couple like people that stood behind, a couple natives, but it's totally revamped the neighborhood. And many neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Sheepshead Bay, for example, which borders Gravesend, it's like the next neighborhood over. You know, when I grew up, I remember it being Italian, Irish, and American Jews. Now, yeah, I'm sure you've been to Sheepshead Bay. It's the Russian Miami, you know. It's a little Odessa, whatever they call it. And there's hardly anything left. There's only one bar left there. It's called Wheelers on Sheepshead Bay Road, and that's probably the last of the last of a neighborhood staple place. And you have Randazzo's, that's still there. You have Roller Roasters. These were neighborhood staples. Like when you were a teenager, you got in the car, you cruised, you went to Roller Roasters. A little older, then you went to Wheelers. You know, these were the staple food spots. But there's still some spots in Brooklyn left, like Brennan and Carr, Buckley's. I don't know if you heard of these places. They're out in South Brooklyn. But South Brooklyn is probably the last place in New York City where you're gonna get these little pieces of like food spots and that old school nostalgia. You know, like, yeah, we're gonna get that rude, unconditional love, is what I call it. Oh, my neighborhood, I don't see anything because the Asian people that are there, they only talk amongst themselves. They don't participate in any community like oriented socializing at all. All they do, you know, they keep the money within them themselves. They acquire more property and like there's no community. Like they're not friendly, they're not talking, you know. There's no community anymore. It's probably been lost a while. I'm not blaming Asians, I'm just stating the current situation there. Like in South Brooklyn, I'm gonna speak for like Brooklyn, like you still have some sense of neighborhood in I mean, even Bensonhurst, there's no, you know, the people that immigrated here in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, like that's out. So it's like the new generation, you know, it's all Russian, Mexican, and Asian. Like the Italian, the Irish, the German, the Latino, you know, Puerto Rican, you know, Latin Caribbean, like they're not there anymore. It's been lost. Like where these people go, I have no idea. I'm always going to have a piece of New York and keep a place to rest here. Like I'm never going to not. Like I'm not one of those Brooklynites that left, went to Staten Island or Jersey. Like I'm not afraid of change. You know, these people that left, that ran away, you know, they sold out. They sold their houses, packed up, left. They didn't know how to like integrate and, you know, immerse with other people from other places. To me, it's a cop out. It's like running away, and that's kind of like just punking out and just creating your own little bubble that's not reality with the rest of the world and America, living in Staten Island and in Jersey, wherever the hell it is. So me, yeah, I'm always gonna have a piece. Like I'm a Brooklynite to the death, you know. But I plan on being in Europe half the time, you know, when I retire. Like I love New York City, and you know, I'm always gonna keep a place, but I need to have. I plan on spending like 4 months to 6 months out of New York, and you know, it's probably, you know, the places that'll probably be is like Greece, Sicily, a couple places in Europe. I feel like writing graffiti's been in and out of my life for 30 years, and it's always there for me. It's like it's my go-to. It's my meditation. It's my drug. It's my drug of choice. It's my go-to. When everything else fails in my life, like things are in disarray in between my ears, that's one of my places I go to, because it's the only place you could be in the moment. You know, and you know, I don't do legal graffiti. Everything's illegal, and it's my way of like, you know, kind of like shitting back on the city and the people that come here. These transplants from other places, you know, they come here, they think it's cool. They're in New York City, and this is such a watered down version of New York City. Like, it's so sterile right now, and I noticed it. I started writing 89, 90 to like 95, took a break, came back in 2000. Took a break, came back in 2003, took a break, stopped in '06, and then came back in 13, 14. And I'm just on a run since. And I'm really enjoying it. As an adult writing graffiti, it's like I'm much smarter than when I was younger. And, I enjoy the thrill. Like, there's nothing better than just being out there, with that little bit of angst, a little anxiety, a little adrenaline rush. It's not so much like doing it, as I think it's the art of like getting over a little bit, sort of mixed with just spraying. When you're doing your thing, you're not thinking about kids, you're not thinking about school, you're not thinking about debt, money, retirement, job, you're not thinking about your health, nothing. You're just in the moment, and you're in that. It's like another dimension for me. It's like being in another place, and it's very comforting. People my age, in my age group range, uh, some of my peers, they think I'm crazy. Like, who does that? Like, you still doing that? Like, they just don't get it. Everybody goes home, they give their wife their checks, they pay their bills, they're saving their 401k plans, talking about retirement, and no one's living in the moment. So for me, graffiti is living in the moment at its finest. Oh, you can see it now in the trains. You see the whole car panels of advertising. I don't know particular what lines, but I see it all the time. I don't know if they're experimenting, but I'm seeing it little by little, more and more. You see it by Shea Stadium on the 7 line. I'm starting to see the F line, and it's here. You see it in advertising, whether you're in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Manhattan, Soho. I mean, it's all over the advertisement and graffiti. And then at the end of the day, when you have like young kids like getting into it or however old they are, there's a lot more bigger fish to fry than somebody like spray painting. I really don't know how they succeeded, but I know there's been a lot of lawsuits with graffiti artists or whatever they call themselves, and using their tags or their background stuff or designs or whatever novelty stuff they come up with in advertisements for clothing and stuff. They're ripping us off all the time. Even graffiti writers, street bombers, or whatever. Like their stuff is on T-shirts and shoes, and also from shoe companies. Through the community, I always hear stuff going on, and even Instagram, it's a blessing and a curse. There's people that put so much work in, and they're just, they're not on Instagram. And then there's people that do one little thing and they post every little thing that they do, and people are under the false impression that this person is all city or like valid in the graffiti world, and it's totally opposite. But when you're old, it's a fun medium to get to use to get your rocks off, but it's very false. I mean, you see what Instagram is. It's crazy what it's done. People are becoming make-believe famous for Instagram every day. Well, I think Instagram has made graffiti like exponentially blow up. I mean, it's all over. Like I travel. I started, back in the day. I went to Puerto Rico. I hit I hit New York City. I never really painted, a couple times out of state, but I started going to Europe in 15, and I can't believe how worldwide graffiti is. Like it's everywhere, and Instagram has just plugged everybody in. It made it so easy. Like when I grew up, you had to work to find your network, to get your plugs, as they say today. I say connections. You had a network, but you had to really do a lot of work. Like people mailed each other letters, like other graffiti writers in other countries. Like now it's just you could direct message someone, hey, what's up? I'm going to be in town. You want to hang out? And it's like there's no loyalty or earning your friendship and and paying your dues. It's just all like carte blanche here. Everyone's so easy accessible, not just in graffiti and everything. It's crazy. So I don't know, I try to keep old morals and values. Yeah, I have an Instagram, but I'm not trying to meet anybody on there. I don't sell anything. It's just for me to see my own stuff and get my own rocks off. But yeah, there's no, the old school way of being and doing things, especially in New York City, it's gone, you know? I'm in the tight crew, acid crew. So, I mean, that's basically, you know, that's the only, I really don't push a lot of crews. Just acid crew and VSOP through somebody that really, a partner of mine that really started like taking it to another level, doing really like neat stuff. I feel like everybody's in it for, you know, for the likes, for this, for that, and sponsorship from spray paint companies, and it's like people forgot what it's about, you know. Like when I grew up, like it's like there's a big story behind a graffiti writer, not just their Instagram page. Like they have a family, they have a history, they have a mother, they come from dysfunctional families, they come from rich families. Like, you know, when I was young, like it was a, you would have dinner, like someone's mother would invite you over, and you'd have dinner in the house with their mother. Or my mother would have all my graffiti friends come by, and it was like, it was much more than going out painting. It was a whole thing involved. And you had to meet, call, people called each other's house phones, beepers. They'd come to the house, you'd have a meal, you know, you have to go, hi, Mrs. Cleaver, like leave it to Beaver. Like the friend would have to like warm up the mother, like, oh, we're just gonna go play or whatever, have fun, or we're gonna go to the city. And meanwhile, we're on the Manhattan Bridge. You know how many times I had to lie for people's, you know, for my friends, to my friends' parents and make them sleep in my house. And even my mother was cool, thank God, she lied for them too. And like it's all gone, everything. Everybody's on their phones. You know, I'm guilty of it too sometimes, but I try to be mindful. It's just, we're living in a, you know, a technocrat society. I feel there's very few people that are still doing it, you know, for the right reasons. And I'm not trying to be the judge, you know, the all-seer or the graffiti, you know, judge, but there's very few people that are like doing it. And it's, the graffiti's gotten so sloppy, no one's like doing it. They're just throwing up garbage all over the place. It's sad when out-of-towners come here and their graffiti looks better than the native New Yorkers. And that's the state we're in. There's a few people that are doing it, you know, right now. And it's just how it is. You know, and then you got the old timers to talk about what they did, you know, for like 2 or 3 years tops, you know, back in the 80s or whatever it is. But they're not painting now. And, you know, they're doing their legal walls, their pieces, taking 9 hours on a piece, but, you know, they should get off the couch and get up. You're not dead yet, and go have some fun, you know. I remember just being on the Avenue U station on the F line, and we were jumping down on the tracks, doing motions. It's when the train pulls in, you're on the opposite side of the track. You jump on the tracks, you know, you hit the train, and the little pause moment when the doors open and close, you hit it, and then you jump back on the platform. And mind you, those are elevated tracks, the F line. So it's like really suicide. If you don't know what you're doing, you could die. Like, so jumping from the platform onto the tracks, and then hitting the train, and then jump back. So one time I was there, and there was like 5 transit cops. They must have seen me jumping. They went down the station and up the other side and started running towards me. And the train was pulling in on the other side. And then I wound up jumping on the back, like we were like going around the train, around the platform. Then the train pulled in, I jumped on the back. And I was like giving the nice middle finger. I mean, there's so many like stupid, corny things. This is like stuff when you were a teenager. I can't tell you how many times when you're in a tunnel, particularly before you go over the Manhattan Bridge, there's like, you know, there's 4 lanes and there's sub-tunnels that go to underground. And you can never be too careful when you're in a tunnel. Like, you're looking this way, you're in between the tracks, you think one train passed, you know. I remember one time there was trains coming in each thing, and I kind of did the Frogger thing. And, you know, thank God I found a little cubby hole and I stayed in between. But, you know, do some like classic New York style graffiti. Like, it's not so busy with all this busy stuff that everyone's doing, you know, readable. First learn how to do a handprint style, then learn how to do a throw up, then a simple block letter, and then maybe a piece. But learn your history. Learn like the people before you. That's what I did. You had to know, like when I was young, you had to like get an old timer and have someone school you on what happened, the history, who's from this neighborhood. Like I grew up in Gravesend, but I know about each neighborhood, who came out of what neighborhood, what, the years, almost the time zones, and what style influenced what. You know, styles is the most important thing. So to me, so hook up with some native New Yorkers and ask for some information. You know, ask for some direction. But be genuine about it. You know how many people come here, they want to get down, you know, to get in the picture with the native New Yorker, like, you know, with their stuff in the background, and then that's it. It's like, let me come here and, you know, suck the culture vulture out of this thing, and when I'm done with it, that's it. You know what I mean? This goes on in many things, not just graffiti, music, everything. People come here, they want to be down, and they do what they got to do, all glossy, make promises to these broken down native New Yorkers, and they get what they want. They get their like 5 minutes of fame, like their validation, and then they bounce. And the other person's left standing there like, you know, I see it all the time. Like I said, yeah, New York is sterile. It's not what it was. It's too safe. It's too Disney. It's like, it's a joke. Like, I don't even like, I used to go out to Manhattan. I used to like going out to Manhattan. Just chill, go out, go to a comedy club, this, that, or listen to some music or whatever. But it's gotten so, like, I can't even stomach these people, you know, with their fake laughs and the ridiculous ways. It's crazy. Like, I just looked at some page, Subway Creatures. There's people with no pants, Subway. I'm like, this is like, I don't know. I feel like everything's going backwards. But we're not going to get into political stuff. I would implement like being the opposite of politically correct. Like, go back to let New Yorkers be New Yorkers, you know? There's nothing worse like getting yelled at by a hipster on a bicycle down Fifth Avenue in Park Slope because you're in their lane a little bit. Like, they're the police. Like, they're about, like, you know, it makes me so angry what's happening. So basically it would be like to like unpolitically correct the state of being that's going on and get rid of all this like brainwashing. Just be who you are. Like, when I grew up, you were black, you were black, you were white, you were white. The kid's Spanish. Spanish covered everything from Latin Caribbean to Mexican to Spain. You were just Spanish. You spoke Spanish, you were Spanish. A white is a white, like Chinese is Chinese. Like, now it's like, if you were Jewish, you were a Jew. Like, there's no, that's it. The guy's from the Middle East, he's an Arab. You know, you go to the Arab deli, you go to the Chinese store. Like everybody's so sensitive now. Like, I don't change for nothing, you know? Yeah, like, I don't change my ways for nobody. It's gotten so bad that it's, you know, that's the only thing that left a bad taste in my mouth, this current state of everybody walking on eggshells. You know, it's like, we did fine then. The more you talk about this, for me, the more you talk about all this political correctness and this triggered garbage, like, you're creating more problems and more racism and everything. Just let people be who they are. We played fine in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and 2000s. These people come here and they want to tell New Yorkers how they should treat each other and talk. It's like, it's a joke. To me, it's a joke.